everyone to the Sister Circle. Are we okay? Can you hear me?
I
Okay,
can, yeah.
okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, it's good to know that we're on. Okay, welcome everybody to the Sister Circle. I am so happy to be here with some esteemed women on discussing so many of the issues that continue to plague us and um, so many questions I think so many people want to know the answers to. So with me today is Andrea George, that's the sports massage therapist and a PCOS sister. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. And Twyla Gilbert, a school counselor, also a PCOS sister. How are you, sweetheart?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you and welcome. And then there's Robertson, that's the vice president of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Association of Endometriosis, Adenomyosis. Am I saying that right? And,
Adenomyosis. Yes.
okay, cool. And PCOS Inc. Thank you so much
Hi.
and welcome.
Thank you for having me. Hi. Good evening,
Yeah,
everyone.
good
Greetings
evening.
from Vincy Land.
Our sister Al.
Yes.
How are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Life is lifing, but you gotta roll with the punches.
Girl, tell me about it. But first of all, before we even begin, I just want to thank you all. I think it takes a certain level of courage to be open about something that seems so personal. And before we even begin, if you are willing to, anybody could start. Um, what, how would you describe PCOS in the most layman's terms to someone who doesn't understand? Am I starting too rough there, or should I have eased in better than that? I feel like that's a very difficult question to start off with, but you know, talk to us. Give me something in layman's terms. How would you describe it to someone who doesn't know? Anyone can start. Don't let me have to start calling names now. Twyla, you first.
Let's see, how would you describe PCOS? I basically would say that PCOS is like a journey. It's a total rediscovery, particularly in your ovaries.
Mhm.
Um, yes, rediscovery, but at the same time, a lot of research per se.
Mhm.
And also, you have your highs, you have your lows, but at the same time, you try to really progress with it in terms of that. Um, with PCOS, there are a lot of mental symptoms that, we struggle with. And we also do have physical symptoms as well. It can definitely be misinterpreted or misunderstood for sure, as persons don't really know basically the nature of what it is. But like I said, it is something again too that I can say you really try to progress through it.
I understand. I understand. Anybody else on just, what there was a question somebody thought of and they said, if you had to describe PCOS as a cartoon character, maybe, who would that be? What would that look like?
Um, I think for me personally, probably the buttercups from Powerpuff Girls.
Powerpuff Girls? What?
Yeah.
I am Buttercup, okay? I love Buttercup. Tell me
I
why.
love her too. I love her too. But I think out of all the three sisters, she's the spicier one. She's the
Mhm.
one that, always seems to be annoyed or upset about something. And it kind of just reminded me because when I got diagnosed with PCOS, it was same time I got diagnosed with two other things.
Mhm.
And it seemed like PCOS was more of the feisty one, more of the one
Mhm.
that kind of knocked on my self-esteem and stuff like that. So maybe Buttercups, even though I like her, but yeah, maybe her.
And what about you, Kimmette?
I think for me, well, in all the complexities of PCOS, I think there's no one character I would identify with. I think it's about three. But the reason why I say so is because that would mirror the woman's journey throughout PCOS, right? So, like when we're just starting, when you're just experiencing the symptoms, I think it would look more like the Tasmanian devil, right? And the reason why I say that is we know that Taz just rolls in,
Yeah.
spinning like a whirlwind, wreaking havoc. And so I think in that early stage, you just like experiencing the symptoms. You don't quite know what to make of it. A woman may or may not have the diagnosis. So I think in the early stages, it would be represented by the Tasmanian devil. But I think like as you start to get a bit more understanding of what things are, there's that gray area where it's kind of like I don't know if you all ever saw Inside Out, sadness from Inside Out.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So for me, like that would be the middle point where you experiencing like all of those emotions, the swings and then the emotional toll that comes with PCOS. And I think like by the end of the journey where you're now seeing the silver lining, it would look
Hmm.
more like Mulan, the Disney princess, because by then, you have your sword and you very much prepared to take on or battle anything. So I think in all the complexities of PCOS, those are the three characters that I would mostly use to describe it.
Okay, thanks. I don't know. Twyla, did you have a character in mind? I know I gave you the harder question about all of this, but is there a character in your mind?
At first, I kind of had SpongeBob in mind. Reason why is that, like Kimmette said, when you just get diagnosed with PCOS, it's like, oh my gosh. But then, SpongeBob has this cookie thing about him. So, it's like you have no choice, but it's like, okay, I really need to like, okay, I'm good, I'm not good, I'm happy, I'm sad. So it's like your emotions are kind of all over the place. And SpongeBob has this cookie type of thing about him, you're always laughing. So this is basically what I would say for me. And also I think I would reference to, is it Elsa or Anna, which one of them that sings the Let It Go sound, the song, like let it go, just let
I
it
think
go.
it's Elsa.
Yes.
Yeah, I get you. For me, we're in the same ballpark because I'm thinking of Squidward. Squidward is
Ah.
miserable. Squidward doesn't take a day off, and that's what I feel that is. I just cannot get over it. Okay, so thank you so much for your complete honesty on all of that. Um, but now we're going to go even deeper. I think, Andrea, you mentioned when you were first diagnosed. I think for all of you, I'd like to know how long have you been living with PCOS and when were you diagnosed? Kimet, maybe?
Okay. For me, I was first
You
diagnosed
make me feel like I'm
in
on, like, I'm on Jeopardy and I have to call Kimet.
I'll
Uh-huh.
take PCOS for 100, Alex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
For me, I was diagnosed in 2017. So it was an interesting journey towards my diagnosis. I actually like woke up one day and I had like excruciating pain in the lower left side of my back.
Mhm.
It ended up in the emergency room and they did like a battery of tests, and that's how I came to the diagnosis of PCOS. So roughly about like 8 years thereabout. But in hindsight, I think I would have been experiencing symptoms since probably like 2009, thereabout.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So
And
for a long time.
2009 to 2017, can you imagine?
Hmm.
That's a long, that's a,
Exactly, exactly. But usually, it takes a good few years before you get that diagnosis. So, I,
yeah.
you know, I think that is characteristic of the journey in and of itself.
And what about you, Andrea?
All right, I muted my.
Andrea?
Sorry. I think I was 17 when I got the diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
But from as long as I knew, getting my period from I think I was the age of 12, 13 when I first got my period, I've never been regular.
Mhm.
Um, and I went to the doctors about, irregular period, excess hair, and stuff like that. Um, and they did further tests, which they came to find there was a small cyst on, I think it was my left ovary at that time.
Mhm.
They did more tests and stuff, but they said to me, it's, I think it was such like a blase term of, having polycystic ovaries. It's like there's no direct answer or direct symptom that says, yes, this is what you've got and this is the diagnosis we're going to give to you. But yeah, it was at the age of 17. They finally officially said, yeah, you've got polycystic ovaries. Nothing really was done about it. But yeah, it was at the age of 17.
And I imagine, when you get to know that at 17 and you're also dealing with so many changes and all that sort of stuff, what does that make you feel like?
It was
At
a
the time,
lot because, sorry, you were saying?
no, I was saying at the time at 17, what does that feel like when you're dealing with so many different things and trying to fit in and always feeling something's wrong just generally, and then you get to know that there's, this further issue.
Yeah. It was a lot because, like I said, I got diagnosed with three different things at the same time. Well, around
Wow.
the same time, I went to the doctor because I knew something wasn't right, and they gave me so many different diagnoses, but I didn't really understand the depth of PCOS until as a adult, not many years ago, and because there was just not much given to young women. But yeah, it was a lot. I didn't really understand it. It was, just get on with my day, carry on, you know, just do what you have to do, sort of thing. I never really took it on. It was just, oh, it's just another condition I have, so I'm just gonna have to crack
Deal with
on with
it.
it, sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I get you. We'll put a pin in that one. Twyla, what about you? How long have you been diagnosed and when were you, how long have you been living with PCOS?
Um, well, firstly, I was at first it wasn't a medical diagnosis. It was rather very strange. I remember about 4 years ago, I was a bridesmaid at one of my friends' weddings, and when I went to the seamstress at the time, she came up to me and she was like, "Do you know that you have PCOS?" So I'm like, what? She just said that to me blatantly. And the next thing that she said was issues with my back. And I think for years I did not struggle because I think in 2017, I had some issues with, the painful periods and irregular periods. And I remember going to the doctor and I had the scans done and it was actually functional cyst. So here I am thinking that, I'm in the clear because it's functional cyst on my ovaries and my cervix. So I'm in the clear. And, not too long thereafter, I started realizing that, my periods were very irregular. But, sometimes you tend to not really take things, to heart. But that good and faithful day when I went to the seamstress, as soon as she saw me trying on my dress, she was like, "You have PCOS." I found it very strange, but I said, "Okay, let me go confirm it." And walked into the doctor, did the test and everything, and noticing that in actuality, she was right. Finally getting some answers, especially for what you're going through. So for me, I can't say that I was sad or angry or whatnot, but I had a sense of comfort because finally I got those answers being diagnosed that day. And I literally believe that that seamstress saved my life in some way or the other by her mentioning that. So I could say
Have
about,
you ever told her that?
I have actually.
Okay.
I went back to her about a year later and I told her, can you imagine that you were right, that I actually do have PCOS? So I always thank her for that journey as well, leading me to that. So yes, so I think about 3, 4 years now.
But since then, how has PCOS impacted your life? And I think as more and more we're getting into the past where it's going to get uncomfortable, and that's where the courage comes of how has that impacted your life?
Definitely. Oh my goodness, it's a whirlwind. Most definitely, it's a whirlwind. When I say a whirlwind, I mean, for one, the sleep. My biggest symptom is insomnia. That is the worst. And as you can imagine, in my field of being a student guidance counselor, I need to be on my P's and Q's. And the issues with sleep has just been one of the worst symptoms ever. Then there's also the tummy that refuses to go away. You could work out, you eat, you it's like it's so frustrating because the
Girl,
tummy is like, I'm
girl,
not going
girl. You
anywhere.
are preaching. You are preaching. This sister
Right?
circle is starting with the truth and honesty. Speak, speak, sing to the choir. Go on.
Yes. Then let's talk about the hormones. Oh my goodness, the crying. You get upset for no reason. You want to just, it's all of a sudden you'll be there comfortable. And it's like all of a sudden you start breaking down in tears. You're like, why am I crying? It's like, okay, your hormones are all over the place. And then you have the brain fog. Imagine you're going to get something in the cupboard. You walk in for 1 minute. By the time you get to the cupboard, you're like, wait, what was I looking for? And it's like, oh my goodness. Go back. The brain fog, oh my, oh, you're trying to remember somebody's name. Or for me, I try to
Mhm.
remember my students' names. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, what's your name again? And I see some of them are like, okay, miss, but you just, I'm like, okay, get it together. So the brain,
And the strange thing is, with some of those symptoms, like when you speak of the insomnia, society tells us, you don't need sleep anyway, and just go through, and you're a superwoman, and you can do all of the things when you don't sleep. But it's only good in theory. That is so unhealthy. And us as a society trying to make this something that you can use to your advantage, it won't work. But thank you so much, Twyla, for speaking about how it's affected you. Let's go on to Kimmette. How has it affected you?
How
Um,
has it not affected me?
Girl, I don't know. You tell me.
So I think for me, I share Twyla's symptom in terms of the chronic fatigue, right, and the insomnia. So the
Mm,
insomnia, it's some days are good and then some days are not so good. But I do share that part of it. So I know what you mean. Like your body is tired, but you just can't fall asleep, right? So that happens a lot with my PCOS. I think for me too, one of the other major things is the hirsutism. Oh my gosh. Ah, Lord. And as we're speaking about transparency, that's a male pattern hair growth. So I'm a very, very hairy person. Like you could see it all on my arms. But
yeah.
I think that for me is like one of the major things. Again, because as women, we have that societal pressure that we need to look a certain way. We need to, like there's that constant pressure in the media for us to be smooth and not have a particular look. And so, that tends to really have an effect on how you see yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
You if you can't afford to do laser treatment, how does that affect you as a woman? So I think that for me is another impact. And then too, just like you constantly kind of have to be on your P's and Q's because PCOS comes linked to a lot of other conditions. And so, if you have, let's say, for instance, a family history of diabetes or family history of hypertension, you again have to be on your P's and Q's when it comes to looking out for these things. So I think that unpredictability in that sense is also another impact that it has had. And then for me, in recent times, the weight fluctuations. So, like Twyla was saying, you'd try everything and that belly just wouldn't go. And there's something that I could also relate to because I keep saying, like, is it me? Because I would just look in the direction of flour, of gluten, and I just start to blow up. I would look in the direction of sugar, and I just,
You can
I
just
don't know
smell
what
it.
it
You
is,
can just look at it
right?
too long.
Right. So for me, those are the kind of negative impacts that I think it has on me. And then the brain fog too. See, I just forgot that brain fog. So you're seeing it live and direct.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kimmette, for
You're welcome.
mentioning that. And you are absolutely correct. And I think even with these things, it also juxtaposes, how you're dealing with this and what society says. So when you say things like what people think women's supposed to look like, and if your laser appointment is down or it's not scheduled or the person had to leave for a week,
Yeah.
I'm staying inside. I'm calling in sick. I don't even know what I'm doing. And these are some serious things. Andrea, talk to me. How has it affected you? I think you're on mute. Are you hearing? Are you hearing Andrea?
No, I think it's mute too.
I think you're on mute, son. Okay, I think we'll have to get back to you because I'm not really hearing you. But just in the meantime, Kimmette, while we're on the topic, um, what would you wish that you knew back then about PCOS that you know now? And I think for a lot of things that you beat up on yourself as a woman dealing with things. And again, knowledge is power. When they say that, that's so important because when you don't know, you think all of it is you. What are some things that you wish you knew then? And it probably saved you. And I imagine too, there are opportunities that you missed or things that you said no to because you didn't know any better and you thought the issue was you. Tell me more about that if you have any of those
I think for
instances.
me, the things that I wish I knew earlier, like three things more or less. The first one being that I wish I knew I wasn't alone because I was going through these different things. And I mean, you've heard about PCOS before, but you still think like there are not persons who could relate exactly to what it is that you're going through. And I think
Yeah.
it was when like I started to advocate and when I started to speak to other persons candidly about my experience that I began to see the different shapes and forms of PCOS in other women, And so that's something I kind of wish I knew back then, because had I known, I would have, formed that community a long time ago, right? So that's one thing. I wish I also knew about the emotional impact. Like coming from a mental health background, you know that everything would have impact, mentally or emotionally. But I don't think I was prepared for what PCOS had in store for me. So I think like I think just coming from that perspective, had I known like exactly what was needed or what resources, what was required at the time, like I think it would have helped me to transition into like getting the diagnosis and navigating the condition a bit easier. And then finally, in terms of just like lifestyle changes, things like avoiding red meat, avoiding dairy, just doing these subtle things to reduce the inflammation and managing stress, because that's another major thing I really wish I had known. Like around the time when I was diagnosed, I was dealing with a lot of things, a lot of personal things, loss of family members and so forth, work. So I think had I known like at that time that level of stress would be a significant trigger, I would have paid more attention to kind of balancing things. And
Yeah.
so that for me is just some of the things I wish I had known back then.
And I think you're so right. Although I don't know how much of telling me not to have dairy would really stop me
Trust
from
me, I slip sometimes. I'm not gonna pretend. I
doing
slip
yes.
a lot of times.
Let's not pretend. Yeah, it's hard,
Yeah,
guys.
we're being very transparent.
Very transparent. But again, I thank you so much for the courage it takes to do that. And when you were talking stress, I mean, look at what you're doing. You're the vice president of this
Yeah,
association. You're a school counselor. You're also a massage therapist. I'm in media doing So all of this is high pressure jobs.
yeah,
And then you have the personal life, and you have all of those things. So it's almost impossible to say keep stress to a minimum. There are times in
yeah.
life where there's just a season where the stress comes and you cannot do anything about it. So let me forward that to you as well, Twyla. What are the things that you wish you knew then that you know now, and how would it have changed you? Do you think you would have been further in life if you knew then that it's not your fault?
Most definitely. I think, at first, when I got diagnosed with PCOS, I did put a lot of blame myself card, because again, so I think sometimes you can be so naive, especially in
Yeah.
regards to information like that, because again, PCOS was not something that was really out there. You would hear persons like 1, 2 persons talk about PCOS, but it was just at the surface level. When I first got diagnosed with PCOS, I could never forget the first thing that the doctor said to me was, to regulate your period, how about you try birth control?
Mm.
And I'm one of those persons where, it's my own personal preference where I completely said, you know what, I don't want to try that alternative. I believe that there are other alternatives out there. And from the time that I was diagnosed, I mean, persons kept a lot of people that I knew who had PCOS kept saying, well, but the birth control helps me regulate my period and whatnot. And there was a time where I was really tempted, to do that, until I started doing some research and I realized that there are other ways and other things that I can do, to regulate my period. So, for example, for me now, it's difficult, but I literally do not drink any juice. I don't take sugar in my tea. I am probably 70% non dairy.
What is the secret? Please share.
20% is probably for like ice cream because something I want to treat myself, So there's that.
And it's a
Um,
cyclical, it's a hell because you get your period, you want to have ice cream. Like, I mean, what do you want me to do?
yes.
Yeah.
So you get that. But again, so one of the things that I've noticed that I've loved as well, and I've learned, and I really believe if that information was circulated out there, what I've been trying to do for myself personally, and I find it works. You see some of the replicas that I used to have, for things like muffins or chocolates. Since I have PCOS, I've been trying to kind of like veganize or non-glutenize the ingredients and make my own stuff. So,
Nice.
I mean, you have trial and error. I mean, sometimes it comes out, not so nice. It doesn't have sugar and whatnot. But I try as much as possible to make it look fun to eat.
And then you alone eating that in the family. Nobody want to touch that.
Let me tell you, once I make it
That's
and
it.
it looks good, everybody eats. Everybody eats. Everybody's on the no sugar train, or I try to tell them. Like, for example, I have my dad. Right now, he's
Yeah.
trying out the kombucha, and if you hear me talk about the benefits and everything, because he'll see it in the fridge. I tell me, what's that? So,
Oh, really? You have your dad drinking kombucha? Okay.
yep.
Right?
No problem.
That's
Yeah, but
real
I
support.
do I do get you. I do get you. And I have to applaud you too for trying the alternative methods. And I remember a friend of mine as well. She was very adamant that she doesn't want any of the chemicals and the what do you call it? The pill, to go on it, and then it might affect her in a certain way. So she was trying to do the natural remedies, and it might take longer, but I think a lot more people feel that that's the place they want to go. So thank you for that. Andrea, can you hear me now? In fact, no. The question is, can I
Yes,
hear?
I
Can
can.
I
Can
hear
you
you
hear
now?
me?
Okay, I can hear you. Okay, so for
I'm
another
so
question.
sorry about that. I had some
No,
technical
it's no,
difficulty.
no worries. But for you, how has PCOS affected your life? I don't know whether you've answered that. And what would you have wished that you knew before that you know now?
I think I would have not been so self-critical with myself. Because growing up in a, I guess, Caribbean household, if you're not doing anything, you're considered lazy. If you're not doing anything, you're not doing anything for yourself. You have to get up and do this, do that. And it was one of those things where it was just I was constantly feeling tired. And it's only as an adult I realized how that massively PCOS massively affects your mood, being tired as well. So I think I was very hard on myself. I was beating myself up thinking, why am I so lazy? Why am I not getting up and, doing what I need to do? So that was a major thing for me, being tired all the time. I didn't realize how much it affected like your mental state as well. I was going through a lot of like, dark days, like a bit of depression and stuff. And I didn't realize they were interlinked. I thought I was just a teenager battling for life and trying to stay upbeat, trying to say positives, trying to be like everybody else in the respects of being a teenager, going out, going partying and drinking, doing all these sorts of stuff. I just couldn't keep up because I was always tired, and I never understood why I was always tired. I thought I was just, I don't know, lazy. I guess that was like the name for me, just being lazy, not doing what I need to do. So I
Yeah.
think I would be so harsh on myself. And if I realized what it was a lot sooner, I think, I'd treat myself a bit kinder. I would allow myself grace. That's something at the age of 30, I'm still learning to do. Allow myself grace, allow myself time where it's like, around the time of the month, instead of, trying to conquer the world, just rest
Yeah.
and relax.
Yeah.
Conquer yourself before you conquer anything else.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm really, it's taken me years, but I'm really trying to allow myself grace, try to not beat myself up anymore, stop being so self-critical, because it's not a nice thing to go through. On top of it not being a nice thing to go through, you're out here just really self-destructing, and it's not ideal. It's definitely not ideal. I think one thing that was heavy on my mind, because growing up I never knew if I wanted to have children or not. And I've heard loads of stories about, people, women with PCOS are still able to have children and stuff. I've never actively tried because I've never been in that position.
Yeah.
Um, However, I've never had a scare in my entire life. And I pretty know, I think every single woman I know in my life has had some sort of scare somehow. I've never had that.
Yes.
So never, so, like, when I speak to like my girls and stuff, and they're like, "You've never had a scare," and I'm just like, "No, like I've never had a scare." So in the back of my head, only recently, I'm like, maybe I do want to have a child, but I would never know because I'm not actively trying to have children.
Yeah.
So that is definitely in the back of my head, and obviously, as you get older, it gets a little bit more complicated as well with that.
Yeah.
But I think it's allowing yourself grace. It's allowing yourself self-care and just being kind to yourself. You can't, the world's already beating you up. Why you being another person to beat yourself up? So I think that's something I would
Exactly.
tell to like my younger self. Just be kind to you. Sleep all day if you have to. So yeah.
Do what you need to for you. Andrea, that's such
Exactly.
an astute, a really astute observation there, and I couldn't agree more. But there's a part of it that you mentioned when you say about Caribbean households, and
Mm.
even this conversation to me goes against what my traditional Caribbean household will think. Why are you on Facebook telling people your business about periods and child and scares, and why is that your thing to do? So
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like, again, I think these conversations aren't just the four of us just talking. I mean, you're going against culture. You're trying
True.
to create a new environment of safety for people like yourself and create a safety that you didn't have as well. So I think I need to commend you again. And if there is one thing, and maybe Kimmette, you tell me that you want to
Mhm.
tell your grandmother or my grandmother who will say, Trisha, why are you on Facebook talking about your business?
I think my grandmother was a bit different from her time because she would,
Okay,
I think, encourage me in a way,
great.
to speak my truth. So I think that's
Yeah.
why, to some extent, I'm a bit bold. But I do get what you're saying in terms of that cultural, that stigma,
Yeah.
and that cultural element of it. Because we do have that, even in talking like about, how the periods impact you, how the aspect of PCOS affects, your intimacy with your partner, like things like that, you're not supposed to share because they're still somewhat taboo. So I think, yeah, I understand it from a broader perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Twyla, anything on your end?
Oh my goodness, the cultural barriers, it's really crazy. I remember when I started really speaking about PCOS, I got a lot of I wouldn't say backlash, but a lot of persons did not understand. I'm usually a very reserved and very private person, but like I said, I was very naive, and there were a lot of people who are actually naive. And I honestly believe in educating persons and really advocating. So I literally had to educate my family first before I
Yeah.
could educate others,
Yeah.
because like you said, it's not something that they would want you to prioritize because of the cultural barriers that we have. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I think now, particularly my family, they're more understanding, especially for me. My very, very, very first symptom of PCOS, like I said, was my stomach. So, people usually
Mhm.
like to make comments, oh, you're getting it good. Like, make these
Oh my
subtle
gosh,
comments and
again,
stuff.
Caribbean culture. Boy, it takes
See,
real nice by you. Boy, it takes nice. What's the wait like?
yes. And yes, oh my goodness. And then I would be like, oh my goodness, if only you guys knew. And again, too, I've always been this in my family. We don't really have persons who are big per se.
Mhm.
Everybody that I grew up with more or less were more or less tiny. And
Mhm.
growing up, I always had an issue with my weight. My weight was always, up and down. And this size that I am now. This is the biggest that I have ever been. And my weight, literally, my weight has always been inconsistent, very inconsistent.
Mhm.
Because what would happen is that with PCOS, I would eat healthy and everything, and then I would have a cheat weight. And I'm going to be frank, sometimes when the weight comes off, I feel like I'm too small and I stop. And then it's like, I'm like, okay, I'm too big, and I get back. So, you have,
Yeah, you're looking for that Goldilocks right
yeah,
side, right?
yeah.
That's right.
So it's a lot because you try to gauge that. So for me, when my family started seeing me putting on weight and stuff, they had a lot of comments to make. So I had to go and re-educate persons because it was really getting frustrating, because it's like you have to explain what is going on with your body. So even
Yeah.
me now, I live in a community that is family oriented. So even things like, they'll see me walking down the road, and where I live is literally maybe a 20-minute walk up the hill and down. So persons will tell me, instead you lose weight, you just putting on weight and whatnot. Like they would make these subtle, comments that
Comment.
comes off
And
like
not so
joking with
subtle
them.
either. Not so subtle.
Yes, yes. So it would get me so aggravated, and I'd want to. So it's like Andrea said, one of the things that I've learned, right now, I can definitely see that I am getting to be comfortable in this body, getting to be patient with myself. For example, when I look at the tummy in the in the mirror, I'm like, Grace, Grace, I know. I know the day will come when you'll not be there, so I look at it,
Yeah.
I'm like, we got this, we're in this together, so
Like
I'm
the
being
belly is its own entity.
its
Like,
Right?
own entity. Oh my gosh. And the other thing too, even pictures. I mean, to be honest, again, to in my field as a counselor, I really have to ensure that my mental health is here, because if it's not here as a counselor, it's going to show. Especially if I'm
yeah.
Yeah.
lifting students' self-esteem and I'm trying to
Yeah.
self-empower them. And imagine I don't want to look in the mirror. So I had to learn to look in the mirror and just accept that this is where I'm at. And I am going through this journey, I'm going through this process, and I am at one point, I'm going to get to where I want it to be. So I find for me, especially in regards to advocating and educating, I find it's gone a very long way. My family hasn't made these subtle comments, in a very long time. So I feel like, it's working out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what it takes to be a leader in any.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this huge thing like the way you are, Kimmette. But it's just a leader in your family and teaching them manners or whatever else. Just to have some. I don't know, just to understand that not everybody will take things the same way.
True.
But again, the same conversation about community and culture and Caribbean households. These are things that we also need to think about because you look at some of the issues, women's issues in the global context, and somehow when they talk about it, it doesn't really fit into our own culture. Like we have to create that kind of vibe. For my next question, though, in your experience living with PCOS, what do you believe society is getting completely wrong, and what do you believe that it's getting right? Completely wrong, and what do you think it's getting right? Is it getting anything right? Shall I call a name again? Jesse, on this episode, let's call
I
Andrea.
don't mind speaking. I think one thing that they're getting wrong is, from my experiences, it's very normal, so it's not a major thing anymore. You know, most women have it, so it's not really a major thing. Um, I think one thing they really got wrong for me was a few years ago, I was at a doctor. I was having some severe like stomach pains and stuff, and they were trying to figure out what was wrong. And then they were convinced that it was something. I think it was PID. And
Ah,
I said to them, and I explained like all my symptoms and stuff. And I said to them, I don't think it's that. I believe it's to do with my PCOS. And then the doctor was like, so who gave you this diagnosis? I said to her, this is going back a few years now. These were my symptoms. They did some tests, and this was the result. She was like, "What test did they do?" And I explained to her. And then she goes, "So what were your symptoms?" So I explained to her. And then I said to her, they also found, I said to her about the excess hair and the irregular period. She's like, "Yeah, well, that's kind of normal." And then what threw me off was the fact that she said, when I told her that they also found a cyst on my ovary, she was like, "Yeah, that's normal." So I said to her, if I had a cyst underneath my tongue and I had to go have an operation, if a cyst in my mouth is not normal, why is a cyst on my ovaries normal? And
Yeah,
why are you making it such a normal thing for women to have cysts on their ovaries, or a normal thing for women to have excess hair, or a normal thing for constantly have irregular periods? It's not normal. And I feel like that's where they go wrong. It's just like, oh, it's just another period. Oh, it's just a hormonal imbalance. And it's just like, it's not that though. It's something
and
deeper, and you guys are just breezing past it.
that's crazy because it's also a thing where you go to a professional where you think, I just want to lay myself to you and say, please tell me what's wrong.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
now I am in a thing where I have to argue and I have to fight to be heard and to be seen in the way that I need to. And
Yeah.
again, it's the safe spaces that you need where people will listen to you. And I think there are some studies about even race and health and how
Hmm.
that changes things, and culture and health and all of those little things. So I appreciate you saying that. What about you, Kimmette? Twyla,
I
don't worry, I'm
think
coming for you.
I think I echo what Andrea is saying in terms of the normalizing. But also just like I think part of what is wrong, a bit wrong in the healthcare, sphere is the dismissing women's call for help or their cry for help. So we would go, we would, express that we are having a concern, and it's like, okay, well, why would you self-diagnose this? Why would you self-diagnose? Why do you think it's this? Or even if you like you know you're tracking your history and then you try to suggest that it might be something else, right? Or you ask your doctor to explore other possibilities. Like sometimes that comes up, as an issue. So I think that in itself is something that is going wrong or has been wrong. And also I think there's still to some extent that misconception about PCOS just being about irregular periods and infertility. So
Yeah,
I think that is still there. Like you mentioned PCOS, and then you would hear the comments like, "Oh, okay, you can't have children," or "Okay, well, you don't see your period." But
yeah,
then not every woman who has PCOS would have the missed periods. You have some who have
exactly.
very heavy periods. You have those who have painful periods. So it's a mix, and I think that misconception is kind of what society gets wrong to some extent. And I'd leave some for Twyla.
Twyla?
Most definitely echoing what Kimmette said for sure. I think the misconception again is, like you said, when you see you have PCOS, the very, very, very first thing that comes out from somebody's mouth, particularly men, is like, "Oh, that means you cannot have children." That's the very first thing that you hear.
Really? So
Like,
for me, it's like they'll say, "No, but you have to eat ital. You're not eating the right thing. Everybody have PCOS, even men are getting PCOS." You know?
trust me, it's always amazing because they have this. One of the things that I've noticed is that men always have the most to see because they look at us women as, we're whiny, we have the most things in the world, we know we need to be strong. So for
Yeah.
example, one of the things that one of the issues too I find that they get wrong is like, you see when your hormones are raging and it's all over the place, and you're emotional and you're crying, they'll tell you, "But what is wrong with you? You're supposed to know what's wrong." And then you're like, "But I don't know what's wrong with me. It's my hormones." And then they would be like, "But why are you blaming it on the hormones?" And it's always this type of, you know,
I see Andrea there like,
Andrea,
yes.
agree with me.
I
It's
think they
like
can
you
try to
supposed to
empathize,
know.
but
You're supposed to know.
they cannot compute, they cannot understand,
At
you know?
all, at all. And also,
Yes.
I would say, I think also to the limitation that they place on the emotional and the mental impact that PCOS can have. I
Yeah.
remember about 2 years ago, because of the insomnia, and I was taking on so much stress. And that's the thing about PCOS. It's like PCOS feeds on your emotions. It feeds on your mental health. It's like when everything is like haywire, PCOS is like, "Here I am." And 2 years ago, I had issues sleeping for months, and I remember I actually had a seizure in my sleep, and I was rushed to the hospital and everything. And the doctors were carrying out the tests and scans and everything. I remember a doctor. I remember when he saw this area of mine a little bit dark, he was like, "Maybe you have maybe it's diabetes." I'm like, "Maybe it's what?" Because usually when you see, persons have this dark
The
area there,
darker thing around the
always,
neck, yeah.
yes. And then with PCOS, you're susceptible to, getting type 2 diabetes and
The
stuff. So they
insulin
did
resistance,
yes, so
yeah.
they did the test and everything, getting to find out that it wasn't anything in terms of diabetes. And I spent 2 days at the hospital, and the doctors were like, "So what is going on?" And I remember there was this doctor that came by my bedside, a female, and I was explaining to her, that I have PCOS, and it could be, because of the stress and my hormones and all of these things and the insomnia. And then she was like, "You probably have a point." But I remember at that time my blood pressure level was really, really high, and I had to sit on that bed. And let me tell you, I had never been hospitalized in my entire life. I'd never had any seizures in my entire life. So this was just new to
Wow.
me. And I'm at this hospital, and it's like everybody's kind of like trying to figure out what's going on and trying to poke into me and everything. And I had to sit on this bed, and I had to say to myself, "You know what? I honestly believe that this is PCOS related, and what I'm gonna do is basically try to manage my stress a little better." So after I was released, I started really, like I said, patience. I really started teaching myself patience. I started not taking on too much. Instead of me pouring out constantly, I started to refill my cup. So one of the things that I would say to myself is that, you cannot pour out from an empty cup. You have to constantly replenish. You
Preach,
know. Yeah, so
preach.
honestly, the emotional and the mental turmoil that PCOS gives women is something that is really and truly not being prioritized. But I can say what society has gotten right. Number one, having, webinars like this to advocate. Persons are now more open. And honestly, I have a lot of male friends who I can say I'm very, very proud of. The moment you say that you have PCOS, some of them would go and research, and then they would get some things wrong, and ask you all of those questions.
Of course
But
they would do, yeah.
yes. But now, getting to have those types of sessions and getting to advocate and everything, I think they're a little bit more informed. There's still a lot more that can be done. but I could say that they're a little bit more informed as well. And then there's this man on TikTok, I forgot his name, but this man on TikTok, he has this PCOS channel, and he's always hitting like every single thing PCOS related. Like he's so well informed and everything. And when I listen to it, I'm like, listen, it's a man actually speaking about PCOS, symptoms. And also too, again too, we also have the healthcare sector, because when you get diagnosed with PCOS, the very first thing that a doctor says to you is, let us try birth control. When you're ready to get pregnant, then you can return. So I mean, give us options. There are other options. There's hormonal therapy. There are other means and ways that we can manage it, in terms of telling us, here is birth control. When you're ready to get pregnant, let's try this. We can
Yeah.
start the process now. Early intervention is important. So this is basically where I feel they have this this lack.
Listen, clearly you're giving this so much thought. I think you really went in, and you are absolutely right, because the thing about prescribing birth control, and that seems to be the only thing, and that's what I experienced as well. And I, unlike you, Andrea, I didn't have that thing in me where I would ask the doctors, or try to debate or have this conversation. I just take in the prescription and I go into the pharmacist, and that's what they tell me to do, and that's what I'm doing. So it's also knowing your own autonomy and practicing that and exercising that. So that's really important. I know we're kind of pressed for time, so but we're going to deal with some of the issues like resources. What resources do you need as a PCOS survivor? Do you think that are not readily available? And also, if you had the power to change one thing, with whatever perspective, healthcare services, perhaps research or medicine. I know we spoke about the pill and that sort of thing, but is there any other thing that you would have wanted to see, and what would you want to see differently with regards to PCOS and how to deal with the resources? Andrea, I don't think I've heard you for a while.
I was actually going to speak. I think there's not much said in schools about this. I think, especially when it comes to, like, I guess, sex education, it's the birds and the bees, and that's about it. It's, just having sex to have children. There's not much depth in, um, there's not much depth about periods. There's not much depth about the illnesses and the diagnosis and stuff that comes with being a woman,
Mhm.
and as a young woman going through like secondary school and stuff like that, there was literally zero, nothing taught about it. So when I came to find out that I have PCOS, I was just like, what is this? They gave me a pamphlet, read the pamphlet, off you go. That was it. That was literally it. So I feel like as a young woman and young women growing up, I think that's definitely something that needs to be taught, not just to women, but to men as well. Because it's important, because as men, you're gonna grow up, you're gonna get into relationships with women that suffer from it. And if you don't have the understanding, how can you actually be committed in that relationship because you don't have the understanding? Like Twyla said, the first thing they say is that, oh, you can't have children. Now I've heard this so many times in my life. It's like, but that's not just it. Or another thing was, what can you experience periods every month? Can you not control it? Do you think I want to be crying every month? Do you think I want to be sad, not knowing what's going on with me? Do you think that makes me happy? It doesn't. So I think that there's a lack of education from a young age. It's you only get educated when it's happening to you, and I think that that's where we're failing. Like, it needs to be before anything like that happens. I think it definitely needs to be from like school days, because by the time you get to the age where it's happening to you, it's a little bit late, because you're just like, what am I supposed to do with this information now? Why didn't I have it a few years ago, sort of thing?
Yeah,
So I think that's what I would say.
yeah, I get you. And with you, Kimet?
I think for me, it would be if we touch back a bit on the healthcare aspect of it. I think it would be like more affordable access to specialist care. Because, like for me here, um, when I had to do my surgery, I had to fly out in order to get that done. So I think that's something, yeah, I had to fly out to Trinidad to get that done. So if we have more persons who are, specialized in the different areas, that would be something that I think would help. Also the educational aspect of it, the educational outreach. There's the internet and persons are researching for themselves, but I think going out more into the communities and to the schools and to the workplaces even, that is something that is very, very necessary, very much needed. And I think more like a holistic approach to treating or managing PCOS, because of the fact that I feel like PCOS is off. I see Andrea
I
clapping.
see Andrea Friday.
Yeah, so PCOS affects a lot of different areas, right? A lot of different spheres. And so we have the mental or the emotional toll. We have it affecting our hormones, we have it affecting our endocrinology, like the endocrine system. So I think like having that specialist team, like when you go to the doctor, you would have that team that could support you. You have the mental health professional, you have the internal medicine doctor, like all of these different persons. I think that is something I would like to see as well. And just like the inclusion of it in the national policies. That's
Yeah,
something I would also, yeah, yeah, so that we could have a bit more funding go towards these kind of initiatives. That is something that I would really also love to see. I think we're getting there slowly,
we are.
but
We are.
but there's still much work to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Twyla?
I definitely believe that we need more support groups. We need support groups. And when I say support groups, I don't necessarily mean, like, for me, I mean, I'm in some groups, on Facebook or Instagram or whatnot. But at the same time, I think it's important to have a shared space. And I'm not
Mm.
just speaking from my, my role as a counselor. But one of the things, you again too with PCOS, knowing that you have sisters, knowing that you have persons who basically go through some of the same things that you do. Not everybody has the same answers. Not everybody has the same techniques and everything. So you can have that shared space where persons can, it doesn't necessarily have to be, a bad thing or a good thing, but we can just share, like, is how we're sharing tonight, basically talking about, how this is affecting us, and making fun out of it, but at the same time taking on the information in. I honestly believe that these things are much more important. When you also look at the healthcare system, I would definitely say that our general doctors, they really do need training, because sometimes when you have issues, you would more than likely go to a general doctor over a gynecologist. And the level of, I would say, non education, or the limitation in knowledge that the general doctors do have with PCOS, I definitely believe that they need, those type of training, particularly at the hospitals or even the health centers, or those types of healthcare circles as well. They do need those training in terms of the doctors and the nurses. And another thing again too is, I mean, we have a prime minister who basically, he announced a couple of months ago that, he would be distributing, the sanitary napkins to, the girls at school and stuff to
Yeah,
end
for career
poverty.
poverty. Mhm.
So, in the back of my mind, like, okay, so what about, workplace? Like, for example, with PCOS, I no longer have an irregular period, but however, I have very, very painful periods. My first 2 to 3 days of my periods are very, very painful. And usually, my very first day of my period, I cannot get up, I cannot go to work and stuff, and I have to be calling in, sick. And you don't always get understanding bosses, because everybody's like, okay, it's your period, you need to suck it up, you're supposed to get used to this by now and whatnot. But at least if we can have a policy in place that would understand that, hey, when we do have at least the first 1 2 days of period pain, it can be recognized as something that is, sick, or painful, because we do go through these things. It makes no sense to go into a work environment and you're in pain and you cannot work on what is, you're going to be unproductive. So if we get a policy in place to actually, recognize those things, I definitely believe that that would be a step in a bigger, circle, or bigger nature in that regard.
I think all of you have said so many really pertinent points. And for you, Twyla, I think you've also said some hard hitting things, especially when it relates to policy. And with the period poverty and wanting to alleviate that by giving the sanitary napkins, I think that really shook some people and gave them that feeling of discomfort in the pit of their stomachs by mentioning periods publicly in the House of Parliament. And I guess with everything else, it's a process. But you are absolutely correct. And what I don't like is when we talk about policy, I don't like men debating on women's issues. Please, I beg, don't. Leave it to us to decide what we want. We will give you the ideas. Please don't do it. So these are the issues I think you are so spot on with. And with regards to the community, this is great. I'm going to have your numbers. I'm going to message you guys. We're going to be great friends. We're going to be sisters in the true sense. But I imagine, imagine if that is this is expanded, and what if we have a WhatsApp group or we're just saying hi and just to know that you're not alone. I think when you talk about the mental health and all the other things, I think that can help as well. So thank you guys so much for these astute observations. And very quickly, I think for my last question, I would want you to give some word of advice to our cisgender women managing PCOS. What would you like them to know? I'm not calling out any names. Do what you want to do with it.
I think I would say you're not alone. You are not abnormal. You're beautiful. Take care of yourself as much as you can and just be kind to yourself. Yeah, be kind to yourself. It's easier said than done, but be kind to yourself. You're not alone in this. You've got people to reach out to, and it's not alien, You've got this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Andrea. And these are the things like, you wish you would have heard yourself um, growing up. Like imagine hearing that from someone. That could have made all the difference. Twyla?
I would definitely echo what Andrea said. Definitely, you're not alone. And again, so this is not your fault. This is really not your fault. You need to not be so hard on yourself. Learn to acquire patience. Give yourself some grace. Most importantly, if you go through this and you feel like you have good days or bad days, that is completely okay. That means that you're human in every sense. But there are persons out there who can support you if needs be. Don't be afraid to reach out to persons that can really understand it. At the same time, if this is not something that you would really like to speak about, that is okay as well. Sometimes you don't necessarily owe people an explanation, but at the same time, learn to process your emotions. Do not keep it on the inside because it's only going to do you more harm than good, especially with the impact of PCOS in terms of stress, anxiety, insomnia, all of those things. And understand that PCOS is something that really is very holistic. It affects both your physical capacity and your mental capacity as well. So learn as much as possible to take care of your body, your mind, your soul, and your spirit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Kimmette?
I think the ladies have said a good bit on it. I think I just add that. I just add that PCOS, although it may shape how you approach your life, I think you should try your best not to let it define you, right? So that would be one of the main things. And just like Twyla said, I think the ability to navigate PCOS would more or less come from as much as you learn about the condition, right? You learn about it and trying to see who within your immediate environment could provide the most support to you, because I think your support system or your ability to find a support system is something that is going to really help you through this process, right? And maybe not everyone has that person, within their home or their spaces, but as you mentioned, there are online spaces, there are online groups, you have the associations throughout the region, the Caribbean region. You have here in St. Vincent, you have in Saint Lucia, Trinidad, Barbados, all of these. So I think like being able to tap into those, you could find the support or you could get that support or sense of sisterhood and community that you need. And through the learning, I think, and sharing your story, then is where the power and the confidence comes into play. Because the more you learn about it, the more you hear other stories, the more you get to that place of comfort, right? To be able to share or speak about your experience, I think that is where you would learn to become a better advocate, not only for yourself, but also maybe for others. So that is what I would share.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
You're
I think
welcome.
we've come to the end of it, but you guys have said some great things. I especially liked, Andrea, when you speak of grace. I think it sounds like an easy enough word to say, grace. It sounds easy, but it's some of the hardest thing to do is to look at yourself and say, you were this, and it's okay, and to forgive yourself and to move on and to not be so hard on yourself. And for you, Kimmette, I think your bravery in so many things, in the surgeries, and the way you're advocating with your own association. You're doing some great work, and it's much
Thank
appreciated.
you.
Thank you for all the information that you bestowed upon us, and for you, Kimmette. I also wanted to say, no, do I have the names
Mhm.
wrong? Yeah, I wanted to say thank you as a counselor, and for you sharing your own vulnerabilities. It means so much. I know as well. You speak of the seizures and the insomnia. I'm really glad that you're doing better, and just thank you so much for coming out and having this discussion. I do want to say that there are people online. They are sending some comments, which I just want to read to you, so you know that we're not just speaking in a vacuum and speaking among ourselves. Somebody says, Kanchira says, thanks for creating a safe space. Sometimes I need someone who won't judge but understand the situation. So we're doing some good work here, and I would love us to continue. I want to thank you all again. This live will be posted later on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining. We appreciate you guys. And I don't know, I think that's it, unless anybody else has something else to say.
I think there's a question,
Oh, is there?
yeah, from Jojo Angel.
Oh, can you read it out? I cannot see it right now.
No worries. It says, how would you advise someone who's been to multiple doctors and none are listening?
Okay. Good question, Jojo, and thank you. Anybody else wants to take that one up?
I think for me, it's easier said than done, but you just have to keep at them. You literally have to
Mhm.
keep at them because at the end of the day, this is your body. Like, this is your health, this is your life. You have to keep at them. You have to stand firm. You have to be assertive and tell them, unless we find an answer, I'm not going to stop. And you have to keep going. I think that was the approach I took. But this is your life, this is your health, this is your body. Just don't give up. Don't give up on it.
Yeah. And I also think when you're standing up in these spaces, you have the courage then to stand up for policy, for bigger
Yeah.
things, and then it starts off small, standing up for yourself. And I know people say it like it's an easy thing, but when nobody else is watching and you are so intimidated by the jargon and the medical names and the
Yeah.
doctor who has all their licenses up, and you're just there wanting to understand things, it's okay to ask questions, and you need to continue to stand up for yourself. But that is a good
Mhm.
Yes.
question.
Speak up even
Yeah.
if your
Yeah.
voice shakes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. Um, any other questions, comments that I would want to? Kantira says this. Okay, cool. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of it once again. Thank you guys so much for joining. And we will have another one very soon. And this one will be posted on YouTube on Ayanola Womanhood later on. So thanks, everyone. Have a, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.